If the shepherd taught the flock who to follow, there would be no division in the body of Christ. But the shepherd is teaching everyone that this is the best church to attend, and if you leave this church, you are in trouble. My covering will be taken away from you. Where is the God of our fathers that we used to worship without covering? Where is the God of our fathers in 1960, 1950? Where?
So the question that I was asking just before you went off was, you've been known of being acquainted with one of the most controversial preachers in Africa, particularly in South Africa, who has claimed at some point you have raised somebody from the dead. Then the question comes and say, may you describe your relationship with this man of God, which should be Alph Lukau? And are you also in support of his doctrine? And are you still in good books with this particular man of God?
Okay, I met Pastor Alph sometime in 2017, and ending of 2017. That's when I met Pastor Alph. He's a man I used to follow. He's a man I used to follow. I used to love his style. I used to love his, just his way of doing things. I used to love it, up until I met up with him, and then he imparted a lot of knowledge, to me. He shared a lot of knowledge in terms of ministry, because he has been in the ministry for quite some time. So he shared quite a lot of things with me, up to a point when I started the Back to Christ movement. When I started the Back to Christ movement, most of my messages were contradicting almost everything that he does. And most of my messages were contradicting almost everything that that his ministry believes in. So it sounded as if I was attacking him in some way, but I was not attacking him. I was just preaching what I believe to be the truth, So because of that, our relationship became sour. We never fought. We never had any bad whatever things that happened. But because of the message that I was preaching and the message and everything, we just had a bit of a misunderstanding in terms of the Back to Christ message that I was preaching. You see, I was preaching the Back to Christ message, and then whatever that he was he does in his ministry and he preaches in his ministry seemed to be in contradiction with everything that I was doing and everything that had to do with my message. So we had a fallout because of the message, not because of any fights or whatsoever.
I see. Interesting. And just another, additional question. Would you still be comfortable to be still acquainted with his doctrine and the way he does things, or his ministry?
Well, if I still wanted to be acquainted with him, I would have been acquainted with him even right now. But I was put on the spot. Let me put it this way: I was put on the spot where I had to choose whether to continue preaching the Back to Christ message or to be acquainted with him. And then I chose to preach the Back to Christ message and cut ties with him. I think I've answered you there.
Yeah, sure. Before I go to my next question, I would just favor and pick one question from the commentary section. Somebody was asking, does that mean at the point you were so much acquainted with him, you did not have the spirit of discernment?
What did she say?
He was saying that the time you were acquainted to this man of God, whose doctrine is now contradicting or with what you are preaching, which is back to Christ. At that time, did you not have the spirit of discernment to realize that the way of doing things that he was doing and his doctrine was quite off? I think we have lost him again. Now we'll try and get him back.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You can ask again. Yeah.
All right. The gentleman who was asking a question, he was saying the time that you were acquainted with Alph Lukau, did you not have the spirit of discernment to realize and know that this doctrine is not what we should stand for? Since now the Back to Christ message that you are preaching seems to be contradicting with what he does. Does that mean at that point he did not have the spirit of discernment? That was the question.
The person was asking that. Has that person ever been in a relationship before?
Probably. I'm sure they're grown up to have been in a relationship.
Maybe how many relationships? Maybe 2, 3, 4, 1, 2?
Maybe 4 or 5.
Maybe 4 or 5. You see, in this life, when you love someone and when you want to follow someone, you always tend to overlook a lot of things. It same applies when you're in a relationship, you know, and you're in a relationship with a murderer. No matter how much people can tell you that, no, this guy is a murderer, because of love, you'll be blinded and you'll say, no, I'm not going to leave because I love him. So people will say things and you will also feel some type of way at some point. But at the end of the day, because you love this person that you are following and you are so much inspired by him, you know, and you say, you know what, whatever it is, I just don't care. You just overlook everything, you see. You just overlook everything, just like people who have divorced. You know, there are people who are watching right now and they have divorced. Are we going to say, why didn't you realize that, you know, the day you met that you're going to divorce? It doesn't make sense. So that question doesn't really make, you know, sense. Yeah.
This is such an interesting response. I'm sure people can agree with me. This has been the most interesting response here. And then back to my questions. You see, I'm going back to the message that you preached online on Facebook, okay. Church versus. You mentioned about Simon the sorcerer.
Yes.
It's a very interesting story in the Bible. And one of the things that you're commenting on is that when the disciples arrived in that particular city, okay. Simon the sorcerer wanted to offer money.
Yes.
To them, say, you know what, I've seen what you're doing. I've seen you healing the sick. I've seen you prophesying. I've seen you doing A, B, C, D. But they had started preaching the gospel first before okay. they were preaching and doing miracles. And he offered money. And he said, okay. I need what you have so that I may also be able to do it. So okay. bearing that in mind, would you be in a position to condemn the paid one-on-ones that the men of God of our time are practicing? Uh-huh. You know, these days, if you need to go see the men of God, especially the prophets, and have a one-on-one with him, you need to go in with the $200, $150, whatever amount, just okay. so that you get a one-on-one, you know, session with the men of God, get a prophecy, get healing, get a miracle. What okay. is your view to that?
What is corruption?
Probably it's just bribing your way in using a certain, you know, kind or cash or anything just to get where you want to go.
God is not a corrupt God, and God does not operate in that way. God, you see, you cannot bribe God to have a blessing from Him. That is heresy. You know, it's something that is very heretic. You see, we are living in a generation. We are a lost generation, so to say. We believe everything. We have got a lot of spiritual babies claiming to be spiritual adults, you know, who are being misled day in and day out. You cannot bribe your way to God. You cannot pay a man of God for a man of God to pray for you. So any man of God who says, for me to pray for you, you must give me so much amount of money, then you must know that man of God is definitely fake. He's a false man of God. If he's a prophet, he's a false prophet. And he does not preach to save souls. He does not preach to win souls to Christ, but he preaches for the stomach, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, if I got you right, let me summarize and say you do actually any man of God who is doing such a practice to say, if you want a one-on-one with me to get a miracle, prophecy, etc., you need to come and pay a certain amount of money.
What did you say? Come again?
If I got you right, just to summarize what you were saying, you actually do